All right, welcome to Guarantee News. I am your host, Garrett. As usual, if you're watching for a minute, a second, the entire video, thank you. You could be watching anything in the world and you're watching Guarantee News, and I appreciate that. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel at GS Studios, GSTEWDIOS. And on this video, please comment what you think. Where am I right? Where am I right? Where am I wrong? Where do you kind of agree with me but disagree, and vice versa? Tell me in the comments. Please be respectful, but I can't make you, so do whatever you want if you're going to comment, right? So let's get into this episode. It's going to be around what's been going on this month of Trump and Harvard. And if you haven't heard, Trump has been making a lot of demands to a lot of high profile, mid profile, like over 60 colleges to make a change to the way they handle anti-Semitism on their campuses. At least that's how he's explaining it, as like the political marketing play. But it's about way more than that, and changes to basically how these schools are ran entirely. And Harvard has been the first to stand up to him by suing Trump and the Trump administration for cutting funding from Harvard. And this whole thing, the marketing play that Trump is saying, is he's going at these colleges for not fighting anti-Semitism, right? And the whole thing with colleges and anti-Semitism is lately connected to the Israel-Palestine war and the college protests that went on last year because of that war, and a broader conversation about what is the exact definition of anti-Semitism, and is being anti-Semitic the same as being critical of Israel, and how are you able to walk that line, or how are colleges able to fix anti-Semitism going on their campuses, right? And from everything that I've seen, even the Harvard president, which we're gonna get to this, but a lot of these colleges have said we do have a problem of anti-Semitism on our campuses, especially with what's been going on with the Israel and Hamas war that's been affecting a lot of Palestine. But the way that the Trump administration is doing it is it's not addressing anti-Semitism. It's addressing the way these colleges are run as a whole, and he's hiding it under an umbrella, or under a whatever you want to call it, a mask of anti-Semitism. And I'm gonna leave it there, right? So Trump is saying it's about anti-Semitism. It's about way more than that, right? So it started from this letter that the Trump administration sent to the president of Harvard. And when was this? For April 11th. So they sent this letter on April 11th. And they basically said in this, you guys haven't been fighting anti-Semitism. And let me go in a little bit more. Let me see if all right. It basically says you guys haven't been fighting anti-Semitism, and we want you to make all these changes. So let's look. Governance and leadership reforms, merit-based hiring reform, merit-based admissions reform, international admissions reform. So changing the way they hire people, changing the way they admit students, and changing the way they let international students in. All of these things, if you're not obvious, they're about control, and they're saying merit based, which implies that before they are merit based. Viewpoint diversity in admissions and hiring, and it gets interesting because this letter contradicts itself, and it tells what the Trump administration really wants if you read it. But viewpoint diversity in admissions and hiring. Reforming programs with egregious records of anti-Semitism or other biases, discontinuation of DEI. So that interests me, because you're saying viewpoint diversity and admissions and hiring, but then you're also saying you want to discontinue diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think I've had someone much smarter than me say that we need to say diversity, equity, inclusion, because now when you say DEI, it just is so easy as a talking point, and people forget what it even means and what it is, and that's another video for another day. But diversity, equity, inclusion. You're discontinuing diversity, equity, inclusion, but you're also saying that Harvard needs to fix their viewpoint diversity in admissions and hiring. Stop me if I'm wrong, comment. This is a place to comment if you think I could be an idiot. To have differing viewpoints, you have to have people from different walks of life, from different walks of life, from people that feel differently, different genders, different experiences. You can't just say you want viewpoint diversity, but then try to stop something that is supposed to add diversity, equity, inclusion into institutions, and in this case, Harvard. So I think there's a little bit of contradiction right here, and I could be wrong. And then I'll also say this is going to be a quick video, 5 minutes, straight to the take video on what's going on with this. If you want me to go into these letters and the other letter I'm going to show, if this gets 10 likes on this video, I'll go into it and do a more like 20, 25, what I usually do, a deep dive analysis on everything going on with this, where I'll break down more sides. But okay, So viewpoint diversity and admissions hiring, what you're saying isn't already there, but you're also saying discontinuing DEI. Okay. Student discipline reform and accountability, whistleblower reporting and protections. So if somebody says that if somebody on the administration, or if somebody at Harvard that works for Harvard sees that Harvard isn't following the rules of this letter, they can tell the Trump administration and they'll be okay, basically snitching, basically. And that's just the quickest way to say it. But basically, if they're not following the Trump agenda, they can tell and nothing will happen to them and they're probably rewarded. And then transparency and monitoring, basically saying that the Trump administration is going to get information from Harvard every 3 months to monitor that they're making sure that they're doing what they want them to do. And then this says, we expect your immediate cooperation in implementing these critical reforms that will enable Harvard to return to its original mission of innovative research and academic excellence. We expect your immediate cooperation. Keep that in mind because it's going to matter in a couple minutes, right? So the Trump administration sent that letter to Harvard on April 11th. They've been sending letters like that to a lot of schools, right? And a lot of schools have been kind of backing down or doing a bunch of stuff that's not opposite, but different from what Harvard's doing. Then a couple days later, on April 14th, Harvard responded, and they basically said, no, thank you, we're not going to do that. I'll read a couple of things. Over the past 15 months, Harvard has undertaken substantial policy and pragmatic measures. It has made changes to its campus use policies, adopted new accountability procedures, imposed meaningful discipline for those who violate university policies, enhanced programs designed to address bias and promote ideological diversity in civil discourse, hired staff to support these programs and support students, changed partnerships, dedicated resources to combat hate and bias, and enhanced safety and security measures. As a result, Harvard is in a very different place today from where it was a year ago. These efforts and additional measures the university will be making against anti-Semitism not only are the right thing to do, but are also critical to strengthening Harvard's community as a place in which everyone can thrive. They basically said, we get anti-Semitism as a problem. I think everybody can be fair that anti-Semitism is bad and should not be allowed, and if it's going on in campuses, and it seems like it very well is, it needs to be fixed. Harvard said, we agree with that, but you don't fix that by cutting funding related to medical research, scientific research, a whole bunch of shit that has nothing to do with anti-Semitism, right? And you don't force the colleges to do it in the exact ways that you want, and you don't also put in with the anti-Semitism sprinklings or heavy dosings of a whole bunch of other shit that has nothing to do with anti-Semitism, but how the school is ran as a whole. That's basically what they're saying, right? We're going to fix anti-Semitism, and we are, but we're not going to do all this other shit. And then it says, it's unfortunate then that your letter disregards our efforts, right? And then it says right here at the bottom, Harvard remains open to dialogue about what the university has done, and it is planning to do to improve the experience of every member of its community. But Harvard is not prepared to agree to demands that go beyond the lawful authority of this or any administration. So they're basically saying, we want to fix the problems, but we're not going to do what you're saying because you're going past more than that, right? I think I made that pretty clear. Now, the next thing I want to show with this, after kind of just seeing the letters that were sent back and forth and quickly going over what the Trump administration wanted, is I want to show a video from NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt with the Harvard president from a couple of days ago, or it was last week sometime. And I want to start off with I want to say before, and I think I got into this, if you really want to fix the problem of anti-Semitism on college campuses and allow for reasonable, safe protests that aren't hurting people or aren't supporting terrorist organizations, because you don't want that. No reasonable person, I think, wants that. So if you really want to fix these problems and make it done, you would go to the table and you would do a back and forth talk, and you wouldn't do anything about cutting funding, again, to things unrelated to them completely. But let's watch this clip and then go back into it a little bit more.
What they are indicating is that they want to directly review who we hire on our faculty.
And I also want to make the point of, right before this gets in, I'm doing this video because there's a real connection with this administration with power in making a centralized government, which basically means the government can, less people have power of things. And I think the whole point of like democracy and why people say America is so cool, one of the many reasons, there's a lot of reasons, but one of them is we don't have a king. We have checks and balances in place. And Trump, across the board and with colleges, he's not asking for things to be changed, or he's not trying to change things aggressively, which is what a lot of people want. He is cutting things, cutting funding, making changes, full-fledged changes that affect a whole bunch of people that voted for him without giving them any And when I say them, the people that run the organizations that are doing these things are government officials or people that work for the government. He gives them no heads up to prepare and plan for these things. And then it seems like he has no plan on how he's going to execute these things. It looks like he has goals of how he wants to finish things, but not full-fledged plans on how he gets there. And he's just going at it by just doing whatever it seems that he wants. And it's hurting a lot of people in the process. And it seems to be scary because he's chopping down or trying to chop down a lot of things that in place that the organization itself or the government agency itself or the school itself might be doing some things wrong. But it's this thing I always say. It's not the problems that Trump is trying to fix. Those should be fixed. It's the way that he's fixing them, right? That's the thing I'm doing this video for, and that's the thing I keep connecting back with how he's handling immigration, how he's handling the judiciary system, and we've talked about that on Guaranteed News, and we will continue to, and how he's now handling education, right?
That has implications for what kinds of views can be expressed on campus. They also want to be able to tell us who we need to fire, and they also want to intervene in our admissions processes. That is what we are objecting to.
You're taking on the most powerful man in the world.
Want the fastest working GLP-1?
And of course we get an ad, but okay, yeah, skip.
We are defending.
You're taking on the most powerful man in the world.
We are defending what I believe is one of the most important linchpins of the American economy and way of life. Our universities.
How much pain can Harvard absorb here?
We don't know how much we can actually absorb, but what we do know is that we cannot compromise on basic principles like defense of our First Amendment rights.
Is this bigger than Harvard at this point?
Of course it's bigger than Harvard because we look at what's at risk here. And what's at risk is the excellence of higher education in the United States, and in particular, the research mission of many of our universities, which play such a vital role in the U.S. economy and in the health and well-being of the American people.
One of Harvard's
And I'll show this because this is, I think, a good example of how cutting the funding is going to affect the research of real things, again, that have nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Now, I also want to say there's a lot of conversation to be had on, like, should schools be taking money from, or should schools be depending that much from funding from the government anyways? How much power or how much is that back and forth between the government really giving schools money and schools what they do with that money or how the schools is ran? There's conversations to be had about that, and there was a very interesting article that I read from a right-leaning Harvard professor about going into that and how Harvard should do funding, and I'm not going to go into it here. I don't want this video to get too long, but again, if this video gets 10 likes, I'll do a deeper dive into this subject, go on both sides, and do the Guaranteed News thing, but let's keep watching. What's
programs at risk due to the
well-being of the American people.
One of Harvard's programs at risk due to the funding freeze is tuberculosis research.
If the funding were to be suddenly turned on, how quickly could you get back to your work?
It's a hard question because today we could start relatively quickly. 10 days from now, as the network unravels, the damage becomes irrevocable.
Is this a fight you can win?
I don't know the answer to this question, but the stakes are so high that we have no choice.
In a statement, the White House criticized Garber's comments and said, quote, President Trump is standing up for every student denied an education or safe campus because left-wing universities fail to protect their civil rights.
With everything, and again, with that announcement, everything with the Trump administration, you can't just look at what they're saying. With Caroline Leavitt, with Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, who we've talked about a lot of times, with Pete Hegseth, the whatever, the Justice Department, I don't know, he's terrible at his job. Who even remembers what he does? He should be fired immediately. He's terrible. But don't look at what these people say. Look at what they say and then what they do, because they're great marketers and showmen and showwomen, but they do terrible things that go against what they're saying. And I'll leave you with an example of this right here. So look at this article, CNN, really good article. Federal funding freeze on nation's oldest, blah, blah, blah. That's the headline we've been talking about, right? Let's read a couple of things. In a 15-minute hearing Monday, U.S. District Court Judge Allison Burroughs, a Barack Obama appointee, that's important to know right now because people don't even trust judges anymore. So I guess if it's Obama appointee, we'll go into this even more because I can, but it's important to note in this world it's an Obama appointee, right? Said July 2021 for oral arguments. July 2021, Harvard, the nation's oldest and wealthiest college, has asked for a final decision on an expedited schedule rather than an immediate order to restore the money, meaning the university will be out without the grant and contract funds it says are critical for ongoing research for at least the next 12 weeks, unless the White House voluntarily walks back its decision. We'll see about that. I doubt that it will immediately, but hopefully it's not the full 12 weeks. And then that gives an example of what we saw in that video. The funding, like tuberculosis funding, will be stopped for at least, well, for 12 weeks until July 21st, unless the Trump administration walks it back. And then another thing I want to show with this again, to end you on with the point of you can't just listen to what they say. You have to also look at what they do, or also look at the primary, like when they send letters, read the letters. Or that's why I feel like the longer guaranteed news videos are important, because I'm trying to go through them, but we're going to do quicker videos. But you got to read through the letters. You got to look at what they're actually putting into place, not just listen to what they're saying. And let me find this. Let's see. Okay. Trump administration has recently said, I have it saved. Let's see. The Trump administration as recently as last week. Yeah. Okay. This paragraph. This is something I want to make important. Let me make sure you guys see this. The Trump administration, as recently as last week, said its demands and letters it sent to Harvard were intended as part of an ongoing negotiation process. It was an ongoing negotiation process. We had hoped Harvard would come back to the table to discuss those, McMahon told CNBC Squawk Box last Tuesday. And McMahon, if you're thinking of Vince McMahon, I think that's Linda McMahon, the education secretary. Yeah, we're not going to get into that anymore as well. But so they're saying this was supposed to be an ongoing negotiation process. Let's go back to that letter that they sent Harvard. Just in case you guys forgot. I know attention spans and memory is bad. We expect your immediate cooperation in implementing these critical reforms that will enable Harvard to return. Immediate cooperation. And Harvard responds back with, we remain open to dialogue about the university has done and is planning to do. But they're going on TV, on Squawk Box, on places where you watch, and you might not read these two things, and they're saying, but this was supposed to be a back and forth administration. And then you have your Trump fan friend that's telling you, because they watched 10 minutes of Squawk Box, that, you know what I'm saying? So I'll just end it with this. The Trump administration is not trying to fix anti-Semitism on college campuses, because if they were, they would be handling it completely different. And you can make the question of, is it right for colleges to be spending all this money or getting all this money from governments and not wanting governments to say anything to them? But I think the Harvard president was right where he said, I don't know if we can win, but this is a fight that has to be done. Again, I can cover this a lot more. I could talk about this for like 45 minutes and go through everything that Trump said for why I think this is bad, or why what the administration said for why I said this is bad, or why I think this is bad. But send in the comments from what I saw. Where am I right? Where am I wrong? As usual, please subscribe. Thank you for watching Guaranteed News, and have a great rest of your day.